What inspired you?
I've never thought of myself like ending up doing anything else. I mean, obviously acting came into play later and I want to do that for the rest of my life, but music was always there first and I always knew what it was. And so I always feel like when you find that one thing, and you usually find it pretty young, you stick to it because you're so in love with it. And that's always been music with me.
Grammy goes to Espresso, Sabrina Carpenter.
With the release of her album Manchild, Sabrina Carpenter became only the 4th woman in history to have over 12 songs consecutively in the top 40 of the Billboard Hot 100 charts. This happened after she had arguably the biggest song of 2024, Espresso. However, there was a point in time when things weren't always going her way. She would be sued by her former managers and her albums weren't gaining the traction she expected. In today's video, we'll not only be looking at the life of Sabrina Carpenter, but also the lessons we can learn from her 15-year journey to become a global superstar. The early 2000s was a simpler time to be on the internet. MySpace, Club Penguin, and an emerging video sharing platform called YouTube. Whilst it wasn't the platform we all know and love today, some creators were definitely making a name for themselves. Smosh, Ryan Higa, and Fred, who off the virality of his high-pitched, over-the-top comedy character would land a TV show on Nickelodeon. And in 2010, a 10-year-old Sabrina Carpenter would upload her first video. It covered to Taylor Swift's Picture to Burn. Sabrina showed an interest in music from a young age. Her family would often recollect how she started singing at the age of 2 to 3, often performing for family in the living room or at church. She had learned how to play the piano in elementary school, learning how to do so through YouTube tutorials. Whilst she did start with a cover to Taylor Swift, she would cover other artists too, like Adele and Christina Aguilera. Her early covers would get a couple thousand views. It wasn't millions, but it was getting her name out there. She would go on to enter Miley Cyrus's Next Miley online singing contest. The purpose of the competition was to spot young singers who could perform like Miley Cyrus, effectively scouting the next teen star. Sabrina had placed 3rd out of thousands of contestants with her cover of The Climb. This led to Sabrina receiving offers to perform locally at small gigs. It also led to several LA-based meetings with talent managers and agents. Initially, these trips were for looking for an agent, but then Sabrina and her mother would travel often to LA for auditions. Around this time, Sabrina had developed an interest in acting as well, so her parents made sure that she would be homeschooled so she could pursue different auditions. She would land roles, making small TV appearances in Law & Order SVU, The Goodwin Games, and Austin and Ali, along with a voice acting role in Phineas and Ferb. This brings us on to business tip 1. What we can learn from Sabrina releasing her first cover on YouTube is that you need to act. You need to stop waiting for perfection and instead look to launch your product instead. Sabrina didn't wait till she got singing lessons or a label, she just started. Also, you need to leverage platforms which already exist. While YouTube is what she used, I see a lot of businesses leverage the reach of TikTok, which you can use too. If your business is client focused and you're struggling to get clients, what you can do is go to websites like Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. For example, if you sell software, you'll then go to software threads on these websites and start answering questions people have. This lets people know that you know what you're talking about, and then what you will do is let them know about your business. This will increase the likelihood of you landing a potential client. Additionally, she covered Taylor Swift. She knew that she had a huge fan base, and so it was only right to start with a cover to Taylor Swift. Sabrina was borrowing an already established name to build her brand. Additionally, we have business tip 2. Sabrina Carpenter entering Miley Cyrus's singing competition shows that even though she didn't win, this got her name out there. If she didn't take part in this, she wouldn't have gotten the interest from agents and managers. It showcases the importance of seeking out opportunities, especially when the barrier to entry is low and the payoff in terms of visibility and networking could be massive. Having landed these small roles allowed Sabrina Carpenter to eventually be cast as Maya Hart on Girl Meets World on Disney Channel. Girl Meets World was a spin-off of the 1990s hit Boy Meets World. It follows the life of Riley Matthews, a young girl navigating school, friendships, and family life. Sabrina's role within the show was playing the best friend to the main character. Her character provided comedic relief along with emotional depth. She struggled with family and self-identity issues, which gave the show a realistic teen experience. By being on the show, Sabrina would start to build a teenage following. This wouldn't go unnoticed because in 2014, Disney would sign her to their music label Hollywood Records. Disney Channel loved the idea of creating stars who could sing and act. We saw it time and time again with different stars. Selena Gomez, Miley Cyrus, Demi Lovato. In Disney's eyes, Sabrina Carpenter was no different. She would use downtime on set to write and record music. This led to her releasing her debut single, Can't Blame a Girl for for Trying, co-written with Meghan Trainor. This single would be heavily played on Radio Disney. A couple months later, she would release her second single, The Middle of Starting Over, followed by her debut album, Eyes Wide Open. Eyes Wide Open would debut at number 43 on the Billboard album charts. Not bad for the first ever album she released. She would go on to perform the songs from this album at Disney events and fan conventions, as well as making guest appearances on TV and doing interviews to promote her music. Business tip 3. Sabrina landing a reoccurring role on Disney Channel clearly highlights why it's important to develop a diversified skill set which you can leverage for success. She couldn't just sing, she could act and dance as well, increasing her chances of landing a role on Disney. Sabrina would follow up and release another album in 2016 called Evolution. The album explored young love, heartbreak and empowerment. Sabrina described it as representing growth in both her music and herself. There were a total of 10 songs on the album, and with single Thumbs, Sabrina managed to get her first ever platinum single. The music video for Thumbs currently has over 250 million views, so it was definitely undeniable that the song was a hit. This album would peak at 28 on the Billboard charts, helping Sabrina to establish herself as a more serious pop artist. The success of the album would also allow her to embark on her first major concert tour, a total of 40 shows, 30 across the US and Canada, and 10 across Europe. In 2017, she would go on tour again. On the detour, she would perform songs from Evolution and also perform songs she was planning on releasing in the future too. Alongside this, she would also be the opening act for Ariana Grande's Dangerous Women tour and the Vamps' Middle of the Night tour. In 2017, Sabrina would face her first major setback. She would end up getting sued by her former music managers Dan Rojau and Elliot Lurie. They claimed that Sabrina had breached her contract and still owed them a portion of her gross earnings, including advances and revenue from her albums Eyes Wide Open and Evolution. They argued that the termination in 2014 was without cause, so they were still entitled to be paid commission. Luckily, the judge ruled in favor of Sabrina, meaning she didn't have to pay her former managers. The judge also allowed her to recover legal costs from her former managers as well. After 3 seasons, Girl Meets World came to an end in 2017. Sabrina Carpenter would take a break from releasing music and make a greater push towards strengthening her acting portfolio. She landed a role in Disney original movie Adventures in Babysitting. She played Haley Grant in The Hate You Give, the lead actress Nola in The Short History of the Long Road, and Harper Craman, the older sister of the lead character Jodie in Netflix romantic comedy Tall Girl. Sabrina would then make a return to music, releasing Singular Act 1 in 2018. Whilst it didn't perform as well as her previous albums, it did receive positive reviews from music critics. Her song Why from the album would have moderate success, with its music video currently sitting at over 70 million views. She would follow up this album with Singular Act 2 in 2019. Again, she had limited success with this album too. Sabrina really struggled to replicate the success of Evolution. It was hard for her to create a buzz as she wasn't on the Disney Channel anymore, receiving exposure as an actress. As her Singular Act albums didn't perform that well, Hollywood Records would shelf her. She wouldn't be the main priority, as Disney felt it would be better to invest in other up-and-coming stars. Eventually, Sabrina and Hollywood Records would mutually part ways. To make matters worse, she would end up being the talking point of one of the biggest songs of 2021. Olivia Rodrigo, in her hit song Driver's License, mentions how, and you're probably with that blonde girl who always made me doubt, she's so much older than me, she's everything I'm insecure about. Whilst Sabrina Carpenter wasn't explicitly mentioned, fans believed those lyrics were about her. This is because rumors were flying around that Olivia Rodrigo's High School Musical the musical co-star Joshua Bassett had dumped Olivia to be with Sabrina. Fans of Olivia Rodrigo didn't take this too well, and they started to send death threats and hurtful messages towards Sabrina. Both Olivia and Sabrina seem to have resolved their issues though, as they were spotted hugging at the Grammys. 2021 wasn't all too bad for Sabrina Carpenter, as she would sign with Island Records. This was exactly what she needed, because they would give her the creative freedom to make whatever music she wanted. Under Island Records, she underwent a major rebrand. She said that she wanted to redefine her identity and not be constrained by her Disney past. It would certainly work, because her first single under Island Records, Skin, would peak at 48 on the Billboard song charts, her highest charting song at that point in the US. In 2022, Sabrina would go on to release Emails I Can't Send. On this album, Nonsense especially performed well, because anytime Sabrina would perform the song, she would add in different closing lines to the songs depending on which city she was in. For example, during her Coachella 2024 performance, she mentioned how he's drinking my bathwater like it's red wine, a reference to a scene of her then boyfriend Barry Keoghan's movie Saltburn. The success of this album would land her an opportunity to be the opening act for Taylor Swift's The Eras Tour. Sabrina's career was steadily progressing, but her next single would change the course of her career. Sabrina Carpenter would release her song Espresso on April 11, 2024. This song was her first worldwide smash hit. By using the metaphor of coffee, Sabrina would describe how she was addictive and that people couldn't stay away from her. This song would be #1 in over 20 countries, including the US and the UK, and it would go multi-platinum, selling millions of copies. She would follow this up with more successful releases like Please 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 and Taste, cementing herself as one of the new pop stars. Sabrina would end up being nominated in 6 major categories at music's most prestigious award show, the Grammys. She would win Best Pop Vocal Album for Short and Sweet and Best Pop Solo Performance for her song Espresso. Business tip 4. Alongside this, she would release merch related to the album and release a perfume line as well. She would bundle these items with a CD to her album, allowing her to technically sell more album units, helping to create the image that she is a high-selling artist. The website for her merch has a retro feel to it. This is similar to the aesthetic she was going for in her Short and Sweet album, which can especially be seen in her music videos. There's a clear color scheme for the merch. For example, blue is used quite a lot, which is very similar to the album cover. Her merch is related to her best performing song Espresso, candles, posters, earring sets. She has made products which make fans constantly think about her hit song. The merch collections are clearly categorized based on different eras of Sabrina Carpenter's career. This makes the buying experience a lot easier for fans because they'll know which aesthetic of Sabrina Carpenter's career they resonate with the most. This structure is especially perfect for artists who have had evolving visuals throughout their career. Her perfume line Sweet Tooth is the perfect example of creating a product which aligns with Sabrina's brand identity. The name Sweet Tooth mirrors Sabrina's love for sweets. Each new release builds on that candy aesthetic they're going for. Naming the perfumes, things like cherry and caramel, shows how Sabrina is telling a story through each release. The bottle design resembles a chocolate bar. It's definitely a unique concept which allows it to stand out from the generic bottles already on the market. She has a perfume titled Espresso, which smells like coffee beans. This is genius because she's leveraging something which fans really love, which will ultimately help boost sales of her perfume. The music sells the perfume, and the perfume is reinforcing the song's identity. The pricing for her fragrances retail around $35 to $65. This is a more accessible price range compared to designer brands, but it also shows that she's clearly considered that the majority of her core fan base is made up of teenagers. This allows her to sell at a price point she knows fans can afford, whilst also not compromising on making sure her product feels luxurious. Lastly, she's partnered with Scent Beauty to create the perfume line, a company known for co-developing celebrity fragrances like One Direction's fragrance. This allows her to focus on the creative direction of the perfume line, as she knows the distribution of the product will be handled by a company who knows what they're doing. Sabrina would follow this up and release another album called Man's Best Friend. She would receive backlash over the album cover as women felt as though she was pandering towards the male gaze. This album showed that Sabrina was continuing where she left off, as it would chart at #1 on the Billboard album charts, selling over 366,000 units in its first week. The lead single Manchild would debut at #1 as well. And because of the success of this album, Sabrina Carpenter is now going to headline Coachella in 2026, and it doesn't look like she's going to slow down anytime soon.